Hey y'all, I'm Nick, and I'm the guy that built the best Dumble clone ever, apparently. That's kind of a funny title, but um, yeah, I built that amp a little over 10 years ago, I guess. And there's been a lot of interest from folks asking me to build them one, and it's kind of lit the fire again for me about like wanting to build audio equipment. Um, I kind of let it go for a while, and I've been focusing on other things. I'm an artist. I've been painting pretty much my whole life also, and just really enjoy being creative in general and making really nice things, high quality things, things that have value beyond just like what the sum of their parts is. And yeah, so I just want to share some stuff with y'all. I think video response is maybe the best way to do it. I have been living in this thing for over a year now, and am getting close to moving in December to actual more conventional housing. I'm gonna be renting like a basement, finished basement space to live in and work out of, do some artwork, and maybe build some things. So that's kind of where I'm at now. I have gotten a lot of people asking me why I don't build pedals anymore, and sort of there's a lot of different things that factor into that, and I'll share that story later and get into the nitty-gritty details there. So a lot of the main thing is just having a place to build things, and I'm sure most of you have heard about the housing crisis, and I can share a little bit about my story there with that stuff. That's kind of the reasoning behind building this, just so that I have something that I own that is a shelter that I can live in and move around, since property ownership and real estate is just ridiculous right now. So it's just a way to provide for myself and take care of myself, sort of regardless of what's happening to some degree. So yeah, I'm getting a little off track. I have really bad ADHD, so I have some notes here that'll help me kind of dial it back, and give you all what you really want to hear. So I'm open to building some amps. I'm just one guy, so it's probably going to be like a wait list kind of situation, and I don't have a whole lot of means to buy a bunch of parts right now. So if this is something that enough people are really interested in, I'm open to it. We can do like a Kickstarter or something. The story behind that amp that Neil had and how he got it for $1,600, which is a total steal, and I sort of regret selling it at that price, but I had just been laid off from a part-time job where the owner of this startup company I was helping out was like, hey, you've been great, but I want to hire cheaper labor, essentially. And then I went outside and my car wouldn't start, and I had some car troubles, and I had to like figure it out that day. And the same day, Neil sent me a text or a message and sort of lowballed me on that amp, which had been on reverb for months, and nobody was really, I had some watchers, but no one seemed really interested in buying it because it was a no-name, sort of garage build. Anyway, I sort of looked up what the prices of all those parts to build a similar amp would be now, today, and I can't even find a kit that's less than $1,600 just for the parts, not even including, the cabinet and stuff. So realistically, if I were to build these things, the finished cost would be close to $3,500. And that's me trying to keep it as low as possible at the end price. So that's the number I have that I can throw out there right now. I could potentially source the parts from individual vendors slightly cheaper to help improve my margin, but once you factor in the time it takes to track all those parts down and shipping from various vendors and all that, it kind of rounds out to be the same. It's going to cost me about $1,000 to build these amps, just one, and that's not even thinking about like a combo cab with a speaker and all that stuff too, just like a head cabinet. Anyway, but it's something I'm open to. Like, I really enjoy all sorts of things about sort of this vintage style of build where it's super serviceable and robust and just sounds stellar. So yeah, maybe we can do a Kickstarter. Feel free to comment on if you have advice on doing that. I've never done anything like that before. I built my guitar pedal business. So that's all I got to say about the amp stuff. If y'all want me to build amps for y'all, that's the only way I really see forward to generate the funds I would need to set up a shop and do like a small run of 10 or so amps. So yeah, beyond that, this rest of this video is just going to be me talking about my work history and audio equipment specifically. I've done a lot of jobs. I'm kind of like a jack of all trades, but I aspire to be a master of some. And you know, I'll share my artwork also below, so you can check out sort of the visual art things I've been doing. And yeah, I'll talk about sort of how I ended up building guitar pedals and synthesizers and all kinds of stuff. I was art nerd, music nerd in high school, and had some sort of modest equipment that I wanted to improve. And at the time, the internet was starting to explode with DIY information, and I had a really good physics teacher in high school that taught me how to read schematics, and from there I kind of put two and two together and started taking things apart. I was always the kid that broke his toys to see how they worked. It was no different as a teenager, and I started building my own circuits before long, and started out with sort of very idealist ideologies in terms of I wanted to do things and live my life without any debt and have freedom, and so I didn't go to university. I didn't take out a student loan or anything. I was just paying tuition as I went with community college, and I was working 2 part-time jobs, working at a climbing gym and a fast food place, and I put 5 guitar pedals on eBay. And you know, as a classic eBay seller, you just try to cram as many other brands into the description as possible so that you show up in the searches. And as like somebody like a no-name new brand, no one was really going to search for me, so I felt like I had to do that, and it ended up ruffling feathers in certain guitar forums, and people, you know, saying that I was riding on coattails and using their name to sell my product and stuff. And you know, I understand why it rubbed people the wrong way now, but at the time it was just like what people did on eBay, and I didn't see a problem with it. But anyway, I was just selling 5 pedals, and that's how I got my start. Took the money I made from those 5 pedals and made like 20 pedals, and then from those 20 I built like 50 and 50 to 100, and I just kind of built it that way, without taking out a business loan or doing anything, just financing it on my own. And I didn't really have any idea how to run a business. I was just kind of learning as I went. And for me, the most important thing, and the thing that really drove me, was the creative aspect of it, and building things of high quality. I really wanted to, you know, have mastery of this craftsmanship. And throughout this, I was, like I said, just sort of paying my way as I went through school. I didn't have the most supportive parents. They were, you know, typically the typical blue-collar Protestant work ethic. Just work hard and keep your head down, and you know, get a good job with benefits, and you know, then you can do your art or your creative stuff in your free time. They didn't really see value of what I was doing, and didn't really encourage me to grow as a business person. I didn't have much interest in being a business person. I didn't see that, you know, you could do it ethically. I just saw like, oh, all the people that are succeeding in business are exploiting their laborers. They're exploiting, you know, sort of just, you know, buying low and selling high, and having profits be the main priority. And I didn't feel good about that. And so I was just going to work by myself. I didn't know how to hire people or get staff or anything. I wasn't thinking about scaling. I was just kind of doing my thing, and I have the big goals of growth and continuous growth that I feel like are really pushed in our society and culture. And so my motivations and values as a business person were very different, I think, than most people that go into business. I really just wanted to make cool stuff and support myself enough. I still don't want fancy things. I just want to be able to exist and have some degree of freedom. And around this time also, I was, seeing poverty in parts of the world. I volunteered for some spring break trips in college, and saw like really difficult things, kids starving and working in the city dump, and really just put a lot of things into perspective for me as someone that's building these high quality luxury goods and dealing with customers with a lot of first world problems, and then also seeing what really matters in communities, these poor communities and people living in the city dump that actually care for each other and have more community than we have in our isolated but affluent society. So I was sort of turned off by a lot of the things I was seeing in the high end market for anything really. I didn't really have the drive to continue, and it was also a lot, as I had developed about 500 to 1,000 pedals out in the world. Like sometimes parts break and you have to deal with customer service, and I was doing all this by myself as a 20-year-old, 20-something, and eventually I got to the point where I kind of snapped. There was a lot of things that were happening. Like 2008 housing crisis happened, and I managed to like scrape by through that, and but I still was like, as the sales were going down, I was like, I need to make a new product. And I got really excited about making a delay pedal and designed this monster of a thing with an effects loop and effects in the delay line and all kinds of things. And rather than prototype it properly, I jumped right into production phase and made some glaring errors in the PCB. When I ordered all these PCBs, I spent most of my money from the company, and then I couldn't use them because there were errors in the power supply that prevented them from working properly. And so it was just a huge mistake. As someone that was basically functioning as a sole proprietor, I had no safety net, and I just like lost all the money from the company in that, and didn't have enough money to keep up inventory for other things, and was just sort of like done. I just was like, I'm not good at this. My parents are right. I need to go work for someone else, and just get a paycheck. And I, just sort of broke down. So that was sort of the end, more or less, of the Noc3 Effects pedal company. It's really humbling. I, still wanted to build things, so I was, doing some laboring, various like construction type jobs, installing floors, and then I got a job at a factory in Charlotte building high power transmission sensor equipment for the smart grid, and was still working with electronics, just not audio, but really high power circuits, and doing some stuff with fiber optics, and testing things with oscilloscopes and high current generators and high voltage generators. And just like, as someone that is self-taught, it was a really cool place to learn about some stuff. And like a lot of people think of electronics and power running through wires like water runs through a pipe, but that's not actually how it works. There's a field that goes around the wires. That's where the energy is actually, Maxwell's equations, stuff like that. It's pretty deep. And in two high voltage circuits, it's kind of the same thing. That's why lead dress matters. Like the current flow is not just in the wire. The whole system is like alive in a way that I think is super cool. And I can sort of take that broad view in a tube amp and see that how to make something more than just the sum of its parts. Like with a Dumble amp, there's like all these little details, like the aluminum chassis and how it conducts electricity throughout it. So like that's your grounding, essentially. And the Sierra Tone chassis for these Dumble clones are steel, and they're just not going to sound the same because the steel doesn't have the same resistive qualities and conductive qualities, and the flux lines and from the transformers and everything like that. So anyway, I am getting sidetracked. So yeah, I worked as sort of a factory worker for a bit, and then got a job in Asheville working for Blackout Effectors. So I was wanting to still do music stuff and wanting to stay connected with the music world. And Blackout Effectors, pedal company, they're built a lot of fuzz pedals and stuff. And I was just, again, just a factory worker for them, essentially, just stuffing circuit boards and wiring up pedals and, you know, collecting a paycheck and kind of doing whatever with my free time, and not really having to worry about the business end of things. And that was fine. It was still just part-time though. So I was having to do little side hustles all over the place to make ends meet in Nashville. And then, you know, business kind of slowed for them, and they didn't have as many hours for me. And around the same time, my first Asheville rental house that I was in sold out from under us, and basically we got the 30 days notice to move out. And so I didn't have good, you know, good work or a housing situation. And from there I ended up just sort of crashing on a friend's porch for a couple months, and then deciding to take a rock climbing trip out to Yosemite, and did that pilgrimage and lived in the valley and around the valley for about 2 months before hitchhiking north and getting work during the harvest season in Northern California with some other climbers. And I ended up working and hitchhiking solo around this area in 2014. That became notorious as Murder Mountain. There's a Netflix documentary about that place. So I managed to survive that scenario, got some interesting stories, but just stayed there long enough. I didn't finish the harvest season. I just stayed there long enough to make enough money to get back home. And for me, home is here, the Blue Ridge Mountains. As someone that's interested in art and music and climbing, it has all of the things that I need, I think, in my life. So that's where I'm at. That's where I hope to stay. And when I got back to Asheville, you know, I scrambled to find another place to rent, and got a job working at Moog Music via a Craigslist ad of all places. So I started working at Moog doing night shift work for $9.50 an hour, you know. And I had built up Moog. They're a synthesizer company, if you don't know. Pretty cool stuff. One of the pioneers in the early days. I had built them up as sort of this, you know, grand idea, the dream job, basically, that would be like sort of the thing that my parents were saying, where you work for this company, you keep your head down, you get your benefits, you make your wages, you don't have to think about work too much, and you'll be supported and taken care of. And unfortunately, that's not exactly how it worked out. I worked my way up, and ended up working on the Legacy Modulars, which is Bob's original, you know, flagship designs from the 60s, the System 55, the System 35, and the Model 15, and sort of helped get the production of those up and running. And, you know, was working with some really cool folks. I think a lot of the folks still at Moog are really cool, working on the floor, at least in engineering. And it was cool stuff to work on, but unfortunately, in the production side, if you're just working on the factory floor, there was not really enough money to really take care of you well. So I stayed out of passion and of loving the project and the people I was working with, and started having some health problems, and my car broke down. I had no money to get a new car, so I ended up biking to work for 6 months. And you know, I had tonsillitis really bad. I think maybe from doing some cabinet work without proper safety gear, sanding and refinishing some of the cabinets, and ended up having to get my tonsils removed, and there was complications, and I bled a lot, and my throat's still messed up. But you know, I basically, you know, gave it my all and really cared about the stuff I was making there. And then when they sort of abruptly stopped the project, they called us in. They're like, hey, we don't have customers for these anymore, and so we can't build them, and we're just going to repurpose you into standard production, which is less creative, less problem solving, you know, just popping circuit boards in and screwing things together, basically. And they're like, we're gonna just repurpose you to standard production and just, you know, start that next week. And there was no thanks for what we were doing. I mean, we were building these $50,000 synths and cranking out like 5 of them a month for $11.50 an hour. And sure, I had benefits and whatnot, but they weren't really enough to really take care of me. And the rents in Asheville just kept skyrocketing, and it's just, there wasn't enough money to really care for myself. So I left Moog looking for greener pastures, and ended up just doing some other factory work around town because that's the skill set I had. There's a lot of sort of aerospace and defense companies, so I got in with some of them and interviewed around, and was building some high power contactors. I got a soldering certificate for, you know, being able to solder and work on aerospace grade components, and sort of saw like the meticulous record keeping that goes into all of that. And it was still just a factory job that I hated and was sucking my soul. There was no creativity. So I didn't last too long doing factory work, and decided to get outside and work with my body more. And from there I was, you know, working as a rock climbing guide, and then realized that that wasn't really a lucrative industry either. Like, that's a fun job, but pretty dangerous and doesn't exactly provide much security in terms of paying the bills. So ended up going super blue collar and saying, hey, if Nikola Tesla can dig ditches, I can clean gutters. Started cleaning gutters for a couple years and working on roofs, and I enjoyed like the physical aspect and being embodied and getting exercise. And but again, I mean, it wore out. It's not the most appealing job in some ways, and it's stressful to be up on roofs. I was also towards the end there working as a solar installer, and same deal, like climbing a ladder with one hand, holding a solar panel that turns into a sail when the wind hits it, and then transitioning onto a roof and trying not to fall off the roof, and all the things with that, you know. So basically I went from a mental burnout in my early years to more of a physical burnout more recently, and just feeling like, okay, I want to mellow out and not be on a roof anymore, and sort of, you know, still looking for a way to get back on my feet. And the past 10 years or so I've also been painting and doing artwork. So I built this during COVID because I wanted a safe place for me to be, and to explore minimalism as a lifestyle. And I've been, you know, selling off a lot of my stuff that I don't use or need. This has really allowed me space to sort of think about all the things that I've been doing and with my life and what I want to be doing, and sort of coming to terms with, hey, profit's not inherently evil. Like, you need to make enough money to be able to care for yourself and give back. Like, you can't give from an empty plate. And you know, I've been scraping scraps off an empty plate for a long time, and I really do want to grow and grow my artwork, and maybe get back into building things. And I am motivated now to sort of get the business coaching I need and get the financing I need. Maybe take on a little bit of debt if that's what it takes to buoy me into a new chapter where I'm able to care for myself and be involved in a community again of artists and creatives. So I'm moving in to a new place in December, and gonna start, you know, making bigger paintings there, and getting back on the horse in terms of getting off the mountain and back into society, and seeing what cultural change we can bring about. So that's my story. Thanks for listening if you're still here.